Welcome to the June 24th Board of Zoning Appeal meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you not familiar with the board's process, a brief explanation is in order. A detailed explanation has been provided in the back of your agenda. The sequence of events is as follows. Appeals will be heard first. Other business of the board will follow the hearing of the appeals. You're welcome to stay for the entire meeting, but not obligated to do so. All who speak or testify before the board will be sworn in. This may be done either as a group or individually. Our meetings are recorded, so we ask that everyone addressing the board step to the speaker stand and provide their name and address when giving your testimony. Anyone speaking may be cross-examined by an attorney. All documents presented for each case may be accepted by the board. The chairman will rule whether the additional items being offered will be accepted or rejected. The persons presenting which case can also withdraw a document. Each case will be presented by a zoning staff member. Once the BZA staff presentation is complete, the appellant will have the opportunity to present their case. Following the appellant's presentation, the chairman will ask if anyone is opposed to appeal to speak. Next, the board will motion to move to the public portion of the hearing. Then the individual board members will ask anyone who had testified to return to the podium for additional questions. Following the board's questions, a motion and a second will be made by the board to either approve or deny the appeal. Finally, respect for this process and one another is paramount. The deliberations for each case are taken seriously by this board, and likewise, it is the expectation that the respect be accorded to everyone regardless of any emotion that may be involved. No disruptive behavior will be tolerated. This extends to all who have testified as well as members of the audience. Anyone being disrupted will be asked to leave the hearing room. Thank you for your patience and your attention. Do a roll call, please.
Mr. Bartold?
Here.
Mr. Martin?
Here.
Mr. Price?
Here.
Mr. Roberto?
Here.
Mr. Reininger?
Here. Okay. At this moment, we will ask anyone that is planning to testify to stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm that you will tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in matters before the Board of Zoning Appeals? Say I do.
I do.
Thank you. Okay, our first case we will hear BZA 2015-3. It is a variance for an additional wall signage in Article Section 15.8.3G1. The location is at 9870 Colerain Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio. The applicant is Ann Carnes of Sign Dynamics, and the owner is Buddy's Carpet. Staff, do you have a presentation?
We do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jenna LeCount. I am your new Deputy Director for Building, Planning, and Zoning, and I will be presenting staff's findings for you this evening. BZA 2015-03 is a variance request for one additional wall sign at the location of 9870 Colerain Avenue. This one additional wall sign is requested for the north elevation of the new Buddy's Flooring America retail location, and the request is for a 34.84 square foot illuminated sign. The applicant has already been approved for a wall sign facing Colerain Avenue on the west elevation of the building. I'd like to focus your attention on the screen now. The property in question is outlined here in red. It is a two-tenant building that is located at the intersection of Colerain Avenue and Redskin Drive. The applicant in this case is the tenant located on the northern end of the building. The approved signage that I mentioned earlier is located along this portion of the western facade of the building. And the request for one additional sign is along this portion of the northern facade of the shopping center, which does face into the large shopping center to the north. And it also does provide some signage along an access driveway just north of the building. The property is located within the B2 zoning district, which is intended to provide a wide range of retail sales and service. And general uses within a B2 district rely heavily on vehicular traffic. In front of you now is an elevation of the proposed signage for the northern facing facade of the structure. You can see it here. Two quick images to help possibly orient you. One that we discussed earlier, this yellow arrow here on the upper left photo on your screen does indicate the entryway beside the building, just to the north. And the photo image on the right, bottom right, this yellow arrow indicates how the current location is somewhat visually blocked by the existing KFC signage along Colerain Avenue. Previous tenant was Verizon Wireless, and it did have this same signage location on the north facade of the building. So staff's findings, kind of a review of what we just went through, was relatively clean cut, but the signage of 34.84 square foot, the request would, if granted, would keep within the 1 square foot per linear foot of building frontage requirement of the code for allowable signage. Without the variance, the owner would not be able to install any signage on the northern facade of the building. The variance would not adversely affect the delivery of governmental services and would also not negatively impact the character of the neighborhood if the additional signage were allowed. Again, the previous tenant was granted a zoning certificate for signage on both the north and west elevations of this retail location in 2005. Taking into consideration the potential benefit to the applicant if granted, staff does recommend approval. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Thank you. Do we have the applicant? Please come forward. Give me your name and address.
Been done this a couple times. My name is Jeffrey Beck. I'm the owner of Sign Dynamics. We're located in 2781 Thunderhawk Court in Dayton, and we are the regional sign company that handles all the Buddy's carpets from Dayton, Cincinnati. Good evening, everyone. It's pretty cut and dry. We did the sign. We put the sign up not too long ago. That's currently up, the main sign on facing the road. And the client said that even customers complained, and they had felt that they had a little bit of a hardship. The sign, they don't want to make it too big. They don't want to make it overbearing. But they said that they would like to put the one on the side because the multi-tenant sign does block it. And they've even had customers say, I didn't see it, it flapped right past you. And they felt they could do that. Would also, it must be somewhat of a point. I've never been through that, but Verizon did it. And I don't know if Verizon did it because I know they did not get a permit, which we would never do that. We would go through the system, and so would Buddy's. But they must have needed it. Now, I don't know if that's why it's not allowed and you have to get a variance because Verizon put it up without getting approval, so no one's going to do that again. I don't know the reasons why, but I understand why they did it because it was necessary. It is necessary. The thing is that theirs was, if you go with the 1-to-1 ratio, 1 square foot for every linear feet of signage, it could be 60 if it was allowed, and that's what Verizon did. And this one's like half that. So it's not going to be overbearing with the second sign either.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else to speak in favor of this appeal? Anyone to speak against?
I move we close the public portion.
We have someone coming forward.
Oh, sorry.
Speak your name and address, please.
My name is Bernie Fiedleday. I live in Colerain Township. I have a question. There was something there that said that There was a KFC sign that blocked potentially this other sign. Is that, did I hear that correct? 'Cause like, none of you I can hardly hear, just so you know.
That was part of the staff presentation.
Okay, so what happens if the KFC sign comes down? What happens then? Does that revert back to something? Or is all three, there's three sides of this, and now we're wanting a sign, right?
I believe just two sides.
Two sides. And our zoning says what?
Only on the front of the building are we allowed to have a sign according to our current zoning,
So what is the, what's the reason for the variance then?
because they're saying they can't see the
I
sign.
mean, the variance, as long as it's, you can't do a variance if it's against our zoning. So, that's correct, correct?
That's, if it's against the zoning, they're allowed to come through the appellate process, and the appellate.
Well, no, that's not what I said. It's, I said if your variance is, if it's against our zoning, you can't make a variance. That goes back to somebody else.
Staff, can you enlighten us there?
This applicant was granted a zoning certificate for the signage that is now up along Colerain Avenue on the western side of the building. They are going through this particular process, this BZA process, to ask for that variance to get this signage allowed, to get a zoning certificate for the signage on the northern portion of the building.
You just said they were granted the variance. How can you?
I'm sorry.
You just said they were granted the variance.
They were granted a zoning certificate for the sign that is now up
Okay.
along Colerain Avenue. They are tonight requesting a variance for this second additional sign that is not allowed within the current zoning ordinance.
So where does it say that you guys can change the zoning code?
Not changing the zoning code.
You can't do that. You don't have that authority.
We have the authority to, if it's creating a hardship.
Well, what's the hardship to this
That's where they
client?
have to present.
Excuse me?
That's where they have to present if there's a hardship. That's
And if you determine it's a hardship, I guess it's okay. But what I said was that they also said was there's KZ or Kentucky Fried Chicken sign up there that's blocking it, so we need this variance. But my question was to you then, what happens if the KFC sign comes down? So is that,
Could
we got
change
more
the-
signage than that's allowed by law, right?
That is not what is currently presented to us. What we have as a fact is we have a KFC sign that is there that does potentially go
Well,
up.
have you all looked at that? Is that a true story?
I drove by today.
You drove right. Did everybody else, all the other four members?
Sir,
You all looked at it, and that is a true story.
that is a true story, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Anyone else to speak against the motion, or against the appeal? Then I would ask from,
I move that we close the public portion.
do we have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Bartold? Mr. Bartold?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Roberto?
Yes.
Mr. Reininger?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Okay. Now we'll ask the board members to pose questions, and we will start with Mr. Martin.
Well, we had a similar application not too long ago with Burger King, I believe, and I think we all approved it at the time. I would even go so far as to say I think it's a public safety issue that sign probably needs to be there. So I intend to vote for it, and I would make a recommendation that perhaps staff look into whether we can somehow amend the zoning code so that perhaps in a situation like this where the building, especially from one direction and where there's an entranceway, where there's a need for a sign, that perhaps they don't need a variance in the future. So I see no problem with this, and I intend to vote for it.
Mr. Price?
I have no questions.
Mr. Bartle?
Well, the only comment would be, I don't think the KFC sign is as bad as the multi-tenant sign, which I think the gentleman brought up. That blocks the view of the north sign, which then means you probably do need the sign on the corner for people traveling south on Colerain Avenue. So that would be my only comment.
Okay. Mr. Ryan?
Is the main or primary store entrance facing Colerain Avenue or facing the access way?
Come to the podium, please.
I believe it's facing Colerain. I mean, it's kind of weird because both sides kind of face Colerain. The first one all the way, and the other one's kind of at an angle. So some people say, well, that's two front sides. Well, not really. It's not a side, it's not a front. It's kind of in between. It gets that angle coming south.
Will there be pedestrian level signage like on the door or the windows of the store?
We always throw that in. If they ask for it, they probably will have that if they don't already. We do vinyl all day long, stuff like that with windows. If you're requiring, I'll put it up when we install the sign.
I had one other question for clarification from the staff. I thought there was in the regulation the ability on a secondary road to have a sign also as well as a primary road. And if we consider the driveway access a secondary road, is that would that get us?
The driveway could not be considered a road for frontage. It's a public or private right-of-way. So this is just a driveway entrance to a shopping center. So we would not, based on what it says in the resolution, we would not include that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I can say, as I drove by, I was past the store before I noticed the sign. So it is cumbersome to try to notice it, and potentially could be a safety issue, as Mr. Martin presented. And so I would also agree with him that I would allow it for that reason, if nothing else. We'll close that. Make a motion to close the questioning.
I'll move that we approve the, I guess, the two-step process here?
No, I guess you can make a motion.
I'll move that we approve the variance.
I second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Bartold,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Roberto,
Yes.
Mr. Reiniger,
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Okay. We will move to the second case for this evening, which is BZA 2015-4. It is a variance for additional wall signage. Article Section 15.8.3 G1. Location is located at 8403 Colerain Avenue. The applicant is Emily Baymont of Olath Signs. Sorry if I butchered that. And the owner is AT&T. Staff have a presentation?
We do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The appellate has applied for and was denied a zoning certificate for 2 additional wall signs on 2 separate elevations of the new AT&T retail location. We are discussing the south and the west facades of this location at 8403 Colerain Avenue. The south elevation of the building does face an entrance drive for the shopping center, the main entrance drive for the shopping center, and is heavily trafficked. And the west-facing facade acts as the official point of entry into the retail establishment. The applicant has already been approved for a wall sign facing Colerain Avenue on the eastern elevation. The building in question is highlighted here, outlined here in red, is a 2-tenant building located across Colerain Avenue from the cross-county Ronald Reagan Highway ramp. The applicant is located in the southern end of this building. The approved signage located on the eastern portion of the building, the eastern facade of the building, is located in this vicinity. The request for additional signage is found on both the southern side here, facing the access drive, as well as the western side here, which is the primary entrance for the retail location. This is located within the B2 zoning district, which is intended to provide a wide range of retail sales and services. and general uses in a B2 zoning district rely heavily on vehicular traffic. I apologize, these are a bit difficult to see, but hopefully you can find your way in these. This is a view of the south-facing elevation of the building. The smaller image here on the bottom is the existing Radio Shack signage, previous tenant. And the larger image here is the proposed AT&T signage. This is the west-facing facade and main retail entrance. Again, the small image is the existing Radio Shack signage, and the larger image is the proposed AT&T signage. This is another view of the front retail entrance of the entire building, and this is an image of the northeast corner of the same building. Just wanted to point out that the current tenant, America's Best, does have double signage. So this sign here faces Colerain Avenue as allowed within the zoning ordinance, and this sign here on the north side of the building faces another access driveway. The variance requested for signage is not substantial. The applicant proposes a sign of just under 40 square feet. If a variance were granted, the amount of wall signage would be keeping within the 1 square foot per linear foot of building frontage. Without the variance, the owner will not be able to install wall signage on either facade. The variance would not adversely affect the delivery of government services, and the signage would also not negatively impact the character of the existing neighborhood. Prior tenant was granted a zoning certificate for signage on all three of the south, east, and west elevations for this retail location in 1999. But taking into consideration the potential benefit to the applicants if granted, staff recommends approval, and with that, I would be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Can you please approach and give me your name and address?
My name is Charlie Holthouse, representing Holthouse Lackner Signs. The address is 817 Ridgeway, Ridgeway Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So as mentioned, we're applying for signs on both the south-facing side and also the west-facing side. Everything that was mentioned pretty much covered it. The west-facing side, the customer wants that just because it is their main entrance. It faces the parking lot where Walmart, Staples are. So they think they'll be able to draw some customers in a lot easier that way from that direction. The south-facing side, actually, there is a current pylon sign that blocks the sign that we were granted approval for on the east-facing side, the side that faces Ronald Reagan Highway. So you can't see that if you're heading north on Colerain Avenue because that pylon sign blocks it, and AT&T was not given permission to put a tenant panel on that sign. So really the only way to see the store before you have already passed it is with a sign on that south-facing facade, which is why Radio Shack had one there too. So yep, that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak in favor of the applicant? Anyone to speak against the applicant?
Move to close the public portion.
We have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion to close the public portion. We have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Bartold?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Roberto?
Yes.
Mr. Reiniger?
Aye.
Okay. We'll move forward to the board's questions. Mr. Martin?
Again, we just recently granted a variance for a similar situation in the same neighborhood with the urgent care for the same reasons. Again, I think that it's very logical to have those signs there. And frankly, this is a little off topic, but I'm really happy that a tenant's moving in there. That's a shopping center that needs tenants. So I think anything we can do to attract within an attractive way people to go there, I think is great. So I would absolutely approve this. Safety issues as well.
Mr. Price?
The only question I have is, if you could come back up, is why was AT&T denied a panel sign? I mean, were they just out of space, or?
It's just the owner of the shopping center. I don't think, there was enough space on the pylon sign, and all the tenant spaces had already been spoken for at that point, so they just weren't allowed one.
It's the only thing I had for you.
Mr. Bartle?
The only thing would be obviously the sign on the west just makes logical sense because that's where your front door is. And the sign on the south makes sense because if you're looking for this establishment, by the time you get to that intersection, if you didn't have a sign on the south, by the time you're through that intersection, you can't turn left again into the property because of the concrete island. So it makes sense to have them on both sides. But that you're suggesting. That's all.
Mr. Reiniger?
No questions.
And I have no questions.
I move we approve the variance.
Second?
We have a motion to approve the variance with the staff recommendations.
Yes.
And seconded. We have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Bartle?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Roberto?
Yes.
Mr. Reiniger?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, our last case for this evening will be BZA 2015-05. The area variance for an accessory structure is Article Section 10.2.1, Article A, and then 10.2.1, Article C, or Sub C, and 10.2.3B. The location is 3130 West Kemper Road. The applicant is Paul R. And we have a staff presentation. Thank you.
This case is related to the size, height, and location of an accessory structure on a residential district. The applicant proposes to construct a new 38 wide by 60 foot length and 19 foot high pole barn on his lot. The applicant was originally granted a variance by the Colerain Township Board of Zoning Appeals in 2006 to construct a structure similar in size but slightly smaller than the currently proposed pole barn in the front yard. The structure was never built and the zoning certificate expired in late 2007. This is a residential flag lot that measures 2.2 acres. It is 2 properties back from the street, as you can see on the aerial on the screen. The primary structure on the property is 2,080 square feet, and the proposed location of this accessory structure is located towards the front of the property where this driveway branches off to the right, to the east. It is in the lowest lying area on the property, and it is buffered by a substantial tree line just to the south. The only visually impacted neighbor would be across to the east. And it appears that the applicant has said that this particular neighbor is in agreement with the construction of this pole barn. So they would be the only property visually impacted by the barn on this location. This is located within an R4 zoning district and is intended primarily as a primarily for single-family detached homes in moderate densities on lots which are served by water and sewer. Now, this is difficult to see on your screen, so bear with me here, and I'm hoping I can do a good job explaining this to you. What you see in front of you on the site plan, where I have the cursor now, this is your primary structure on the home that sits here that is 2,080 square feet. The proposed location is roughly in this vicinity. It would be meeting setback requirements. But it will be located partially within the front yard due to the skewed orientation of the primary structure. The reason for this new structure is because the applicant would like to store equipment for his contracting business, and this would actually reduce visual clutter that currently exists on the property by
maintaining all of that equipment within an enclosed structure. The proposed materials that the applicant would like to use are similar to those used on the primary structure on the property, and this would maintain consistency in the character of the neighborhood. The proposed structure would exceed the total square footage of the primary structure by about 200 square feet, but again, this is in order to contain all of the large equipment within an enclosed structure, so thereby reducing visual clutter on the property. The height, as calculated by staff in an elevation that was submitted to us, appears to be just over 16 feet tall. So it's nearly 3 feet less than the requested variance. That has to do with the way the ordinance requires that we measure that particular structure. So all of that said, the variance request is substantial. The proposed accessory structure would be larger than the footprint of the principal structure, taller than the allotted 15-foot requirement, and located partially in the front yard. The character of the neighborhood, however, would not substantially be altered by the issuance of this variance, partially because the screening from the existing tree line to the south of where this new structure would be located. Approval of the variance would not affect the delivery of government services. And to construct the accessory structure, a variance would be necessary due to the expiration of the previously approved zoning certificate granted in November of 2006. The suggested placement of the structure is due to the surrounding vegetation and hilly terrain. And staff does not feel that the owner's predicament could be resolved by another means. The height and sizing requirements are made to allow for a large enough structure to enclose large equipment and provide relief from visual clutter on the property. And the exterior of this accessory structure is proposed to be of vinyl siding and stone to match the primary structure on the property, and therefore create a consistent aesthetic nature with the existing neighborhood. By taking into consideration the potential benefits to the applicant, if the variance is granted, staff is recommending approval, and with that, I would be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Okay. Is the applicant here? Can you please come in and give me your name and your address, please?
Paul R., 3130 West Kemper.
Okay. Can you have a presentation?
Basically, as she was saying, there's only one other person that's going to see it, and it's actually my older brother. So it's he sort of wanted me to do it, and I had it approved in '06, but just financially couldn't pull the trigger on a building of that size and everything. So, but if you guys approve it, I'll get all my stuff and inside, and like I said, make the neighborhood look a little bit nicer.
So currently you have stuff.
Yeah, I've got 2 box trucks, boat, RV, Sea-Doos. Yeah, I'm a big toy guy, so I can get it all inside.
All right, very good. Anyone else speaking in favor of the applicant? Anyone speaking against?
I move to close the public portion.
Seconded?
Second.
Wait a minute. What did you just say?
Said, is there a second?
I didn't hear you.
I
Are you saying that somebody can't speak now, or what?
No, I asked for anyone that wanted to step forward against the motion to come forward. No one came forward. If you want to come forward.
You can speak to the mic a little bit better, because I have a comment or two.
Okay, thank you. You're speaking against or for, sir?
Excuse me?
Are you speaking for or against? I asked for.
I'm just making a comment about the whole issue, so you can take it however you want, I believe.
All right.
You need to, we have new mics and stuff, but you need to speak into them. That's what I would say.
Okay, thank you.
So I didn't hear what you said.
I asked if anyone was for to come speak forward, and then no one came forward, so then I asked if anyone was against the motion to come forward.
I didn't hear that. So anyway, you just might want to consider that. You're not speaking.
Thank you.
The mics aren't working right. I guess for me is why the appeal? Why is there an appeal to the BZA? That's a question.
Staff?
It's essentially the same answer that, to the question on the
I
last.
can't hardly hear you, just so you know. You need to speak into the mic.
The mic can hear me. I'll speak louder so that you can hear me. I know the mic can hear me. It's essentially the same answer the last time you asked a question. What the applicant is proposing to do does not meet our zoning regulation. So they come here to the BZA and request a variance so that they are allowed to do this particular project. So that is why we're here in front of the BZA this evening.
Okay, if that's how you're interpreting it, that's fine. I'm okay with that. Just so we're on the same page, just so you know. And what is the zoning there? I think I heard it was R4.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? You know, the staff report, which I thought was interesting. I'll find it in a minute. The staff report at the end said they recommend approval. And I guess I really question that because it's an area variance. It's really a use variance. Now, it may be an area variance because of the buildings and not behind the home, but the applicant was real clear. I mean, you guys went down, and made a comment that the variance they requested is substantial. The proposed building would be larger than the footprint of the principal structure, taller than the allowed 15-foot located in the front yard. The property in question would likely yield a reasonable return without a variance. Well, there's a house there. I guess it is doing that already. The character of the neighborhood would not be substantially altered by the issuance of the variance as the proposed, by the way, pole barn is P-O-L-E, not P-O-L-L. By the proposed pole barn would be screened from view by the existing tree line. And that's not exactly true because there's one little spot when the leaves are off. And I looked it up on the auditor's website. That's not exactly true. And then I guess the other thing I would say is that if it only affects one or two people to create a business within a residential neighborhood, it's like that's okay. No, it's not okay. And then you go on to say the approval would of the variance would not affect the delivery of government service. Well, maybe it would, because he claims that he's going to use this building for maintenance and whatever. There may be fires and stuff there because of gasoline and oil and whatever, because he says he's going to do his maintenance for equipment for his whatever, and it may in fact create a problem for our fire department. Said it isn't clear whether the owner purchased the property with knowledge of zoning restriction. However, the owner was aware that the variance was be necessary following the prior variance request in November 2006. It's a residential area. It's R7. It's not industrial. It's not in commercial. It's not B1. It's not B2. It's not B3. It's residential, not business. The subject property is surrounded by vegetation and backed by a hilly terrain. That's not exactly true. The suggested placement of the structure is due to those constraints. Therefore, the owner's predicament could not be resolved by other means. Well, it could be he could put it behind the home. If that's the issue, which the issue is it's a business building, but is looking at the auditor's website, put it behind the home and wouldn't be this issue, but yeah, it would because it's a business. The placement of the proposed structure is such that it's always pointing on the property between the primary structure and the screening line of trees to the front of the property, providing substantial sight barriers from most neighboring properties. We mean most. It's a residential area. Why would anybody spend a lot of money? And most of these homes, and this one here, I believe, is over 300,000, and the other people on that private lane, why would they have to be worried about, well, most people will not be affected, some people will be affected? That's not what this zoning's about. And y'all need to understand that. The height and sizing requests are made to allow for a large enough structure to enclose large equipment and provide relief from visual clutter on the property. If somebody would pull up the auditor's website, you'll see the clutter. But it says here, for large enough to enclose large equipment. This is not a construction site. It's not a commercial site. It is not a business site. It is a residential site. And these comments by staff is so far out of line, it's unreal. And you all need to understand that. Because if it goes further than this hearing right here, you got some issues. The exterior of the accessory structure is proposed to be a vinyl siding and stone to match the primary structure on the property, as well as to maintain the aesthetic nature of the existing neighborhood. I don't think that makes any difference, but the bottom line is the drawings I saw that were presented, it's strictly a pole barn, and I don't know if any vinyl siding goes vertical. Usually it's aluminum. And I don't know if any stone would be attached somewhere where there's not support behind it, but that's still, it does not count. It is a commercial building for a commercial enterprise in a residential district. And you do not have the authority to change that. By taking into consideration the benefit to the applicant, if the variance is granted, is weighed up against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood and broader communities, staff finds that substantial justice would be done by granting the variance. Where does the staff get that? Who are they to make that comment? You don't know. And some of this stuff that you got on this Duncan thing, you better watch what you're saying, because that is not according to Ohio Revised Code. It's because it's informal. You say it in your text. But don't overstep your bounds. Then the last thing, staff you recommend approval when there's all these things that do not meet our zoning. And you're trying to intimidate this board. Let them be the board. That's their job. And if they don't know, they can ask. But to recommend approval, because most of them up there do not know the law, do not know the zoning code.
Well, like I said, I take personal exception.
Well, maybe you do, sir, but I'll take you to task. But anyway, sir, I just make the comment. So you're 1 out of 4. You're 20%.
Barney, we need to wrap this up because you're starting to make it personal. So that's.
I'm not making it. He made it personal. He made it personal. Anyway, having said that, and don't do that to me, because you're not going to get by with it. Just so you know.
Let's wrap it up, sir.
Okay, so now let's get to where we're really after here. What's the powers? What's the powers of the zoning appeals? What are your powers? I'm asking. You're the chairman. What's your powers?
We have the power to grant a variance based upon a hardship on the applicant, based upon the rules of Duncan law.
Well, you mentioned Duncan, and that's something that's not according to state law. But the hardship is though, and the hardship, what's the hardship?
We've yet to discuss this.
I mean, he doesn't have a hardship, he did this. Are you considering a home occupation? Anybody considering a home occupation? That's a question.
We haven't been afforded the opportunity to ask any questions yet.
Excuse me?
We haven't been afforded to make any questions to the applicant yet, so we'll get to that point at some point.
Okay. So I'm gonna just jump over, is it a home occupation? Because if it is, then that's another issue. It said, your own text, the board shall not be authorized to grant a variance for use that is otherwise prohibited in the zoning district in which the property is located. So the applicant himself said it's for his business. So anyway, this is our text. So it would be against that if you said it's okay. Then in 13.7, no construction, equipment, commercial trailer, or other vehicles or business of an industrial nature shall be parked upon a residential lot. And that's exactly what he's talking about. It's against the rules, the law, our law. The applicant says also the size of the building has been set due to volume of belongings for its use. I am a small independent contractor trying to stay afloat by keeping my equipment out of the weather. This building will also provide me with a space for my maintenance and safety. I feel for the guy, trust me, I do. But the bottom line is, if he can do it, who's the next one can do it? That's my question. Who's the next one that says, I'm going to have my business in my property, and the staff says recommend approval? Who is the next one to say, I got a backyard, I got a garage, I'm going to start my body shop in my backyard? How are you going to stop them? You can't. And that's what I'll say to staff for their comments, if they're out of line. And of course, the vehicles are not keeping with the residential character. I don't know how many of you guys actually looked on the auditor's website, and the eye in the sky is pretty interesting. You can see all the stuff that's going on. And going back to 08, the applicant had a couple pickup trucks and trailers. They actually show him moving on the property. Now he's got 3 or 4 pretty good sized vehicles, vans of trucks, which I think are probably illegal in a residential area. God bless him. But he's got 3 trucks now, or 4, whatever it is, and I don't know how many employees. What happens 10 years from now or 5 years from now? He's got 15 trucks or 20 trucks and 100 employees. I wish him the best. It doesn't belong in a residential neighborhood. That's the key. And if you don't understand that, God help you. That's all I can say. So that's all I really have tonight, gentlemen. Wish you the best of luck. Hope you do the right thing for the community. And why I'm here, and I'm kind of passionate about it, I worked 4.5 years to bring 21st century zoning to Colerain Township as a trustee. It was a lot of work, and I And I'm just really upset when I see things going sideways or people not knowing what took place and why we did things. We built a zoning code that was not so restrictive like a Indian Hill or a Wyoming. We did something where we get things done. But also we did things to try to improve property values. And we all know that property values in Colerain Township are not the best. And if it was stock, we'd all would have sold it a long time ago. So that's what I'll say to that. Do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie. Thank you for your service.
Move we conclude the public portion of this meeting.
Second.
We have a roll call vote, please. We have a motion and a second to close the public speaking.
Mr. Bartold?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Roberto?
Yes.
Mr. Reininger?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Okay, we will now move to the questioning portion. The applicant would please approach the podium. And Mr. Martin, do you have a question for the applicant?
I do, and I cannot believe this, but I disagreed with 99.999% of what the gentleman just spoke before, and especially I disagree with the ad hominem attacks against staff and against the board. Having said that, his conclusions are correct. There is the need here for a use variance. I came to the same conclusions, albeit a different exit off of the expressway, that he came to. You've got a home occupation here. I mean, under any definition, you've got a home occupation. And I don't think you can have a home occupation here without, I know you can't have a home occupation here without a variance. You can't store box trucks on your property. You would need a variance at a minimum under 10.2, and it would be a substantial variance, as staff has said. Unfortunately, you would also need a variance under 10.3 because you're a home occupation. And specifically 10.3.1, K and M, 10.3.2, A and C. You say you're going to do maintenance in these buildings. Again, I didn't agree with the presentation, but I do agree with the conclusion that perhaps you're going to be creating.
Yeah, I don't do any type of it's more fixing the lights, having a place to.
Well, unfortunately, that's not what you said in your submission. In your submission, you say you're going to provide space for my maintenance, saving money. So I have to read that. I have to take you at your word. And in your submission, you said you're going to be doing maintenance on your vehicles in there.
Okay, I apologize for what I wrote. Basically, it's throwing the light. I mean, I've got a mechanic that works on all my stuff.
But I don't. I'm concerned. You're clearly, I think, and again, I have to agree with the gentleman. I think you're in clear violation of 13.7.1. And again, this is where I would encourage staff to send an enforcement officer out. I think you're in clear violation of those provisions for storing utility vehicles and trailers and so on that property. And you're probably going to you should get a notice of violation. I think what you're asking for is way, way, way beyond what should be in a residential area. I know your intention is good, and your intention is to enclose what you have there, but
Yeah, I have actually, if you come out of my driveway and go directly across Kemper Road, there's the exact same size structure on the side of a gentleman's house.
well, and again, believe me, give them the address. These people are new, so believe they will learn that nobody intimidates this board, but we also don't intimidate them. We don't control enforcement. They control enforcement. I know I encourage them to enforce because there's lots of enforcement out there.
Yes, sir.
But that's their job, not my job. So yeah, I agree with you. There's lots of violations out there. But what you're asking, I mean, I looked you up online. You install windows and that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
sir.
I assume you're going to get deliveries at this point.
No, I've got warehouses
Well, then why do you need this?
because I can't leave my trucks where my warehouses are
Why?
because they've been broken into probably 30 times in my 22 years of business.
That seems to me you got to get new warehouses. I mean, you can't use your residence as a warehouse. Basically, is what you're trying to do here.
Okay, yeah, but there will be no deliveries. It's simply my trucks going in and out, which they've been doing for 10 years.
Where do your employees meet you then?
My employees meet at the house.
See, that's in clear violation of the zoning code. Clear violation.
I mean, what this will ultimately do is I'll have to move out of Colerain Township. I mean, I don't think
Again,
I
I'm
have no choice.
sorry about that, but there's no township that's going to allow you to have, it specifically says in the code, you cannot have your employees meet you at your residence and go do jobs. You can't do that. So, again, it's ironic, I admit, but I came to the same conclusion, and I cannot support this. I don't see any way that we could support this, because I do think it sets an awful precedent for the town. You'd have, at a minimum, you'd have to resubmit, seeking a variances under 10.3 as well as 10.2. And I, for one, would never support that, because what you're asking for, we've had other situations before us where other neighbors have complained about similar situations.
Well, that's
Again, all your
the
neighbors
thing,
are
the one,
fine.
like I said, the only person, and there's, I own the private drive.
I understand.
And I've got my parents that also live on our private drive.
I understand. I do understand. Believe me, I sympathized. And I think the gentleman sympathized, from what I could tell. He sympathized with you.
Except for the fact he said, I'm going to get you.
Well,
I don't know, you know.
That's between you and him, and
Yeah,
the
no,
police
that's
department's
actually-
right out there.
I'm glad this is recorded. I mean, it's,
But again, sir, we're talking,
okay, sorry about that.
that's not relevant to what we're doing here. I don't want to belabor the issue. I don't know if the rest of the board may disagree with me, but that's the conclusion I came to.
Mr. Price?
I have no questions. I mean, Mr. Martin just covered pretty much everything I was thinking as well.
Mr. Bartle?
No questions, and I agree with Mr. Martin.
Mr. Reiniger?
A couple of observations, all things else being said. I believe there is a regulation that limits the size of an accessory building to a certain percentage size of the principal structure, and this is actually beyond the size of the principal structure.
That was one of the variances I was going for, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a small part of the whole argument.
Yes,
Your
sir.
initial, on my plot of my home's 2280. 2,280 square foot, I built it.
Okay.
So I don't know
That's
if I
correct.
can.
I don't know what the percentage is, but an accessory structure generally cannot be larger than the principal structure. And the pole barn is considered an accessory structure. It's a small point.
Yes, sir.
Where I have to dig my heels in is you're in an R4. You are an independent contractor doing business out of a residential environment. Also, just a point of order for the staff, there are two more houses beyond the top of that.
Yeah, and that's the reason I couldn't put it on the back of the property, because I would literally change the lady's view.
Their elevation is above your elevation, actually. They look down on your property.
Yeah, if I put the pole barn behind my building up on top of the hill, she would never be, I would block her view that,
Well,
and I couldn't do
so
that. She's
so
been
there is additional things. But my hardship is we've got an R4 district, we've got a business that is trying to be conducted in that, and I don't know that I could go along with that. So it's more of a comment to the question, but the principal structure has to be the primary structure, not the accessory structure.
And I don't have further questions. The rest of the staff or board has covered it. Thank you.
I'll move we deny the variance.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion among the board? Okay. All right, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Bartold,
Yes to deny.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Roberto,
Yes.
Mr. Reininger,
Aye means to deny the variance. Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Sorry, sir. All right, we'll be moving on to.
Finished business?
You have any unfinished business? Okay, any unfinished business?
Welcome to Colerain, by the way.
Thank you.
We do not know unfinished business.
Can I make a statement?
Not
Private
now.
individual? Not in regards to any case, but just behavior.
Let's,
This really has nothing to do with business,
Not on the
unfortunately.
agenda.
Not on the agenda. Approval of minutes, the May 27th, 2015 meeting. I have a motion to approve
I would have,
minutes.
can I just make one, I don't know, the staff, this is your third day on the job. So you were not here at the last meeting.
Correct.
The only, it is stated here that it says, Mr. Martin said this is on resolution, let me get my pages straight here. On page 4 at the bottom, it says, Mr. Martin said he is voting to approve the request because sufficient notice is not given on enforcement. That says, that is absolutely correct as far as it goes. However, the point that I was making was that an enforcement officer did go to this particular property. There were violations, and no notices were issued. Nothing was said to the owner about that. So, again, I know you're new, and this is your area of responsibility, not ours, and I recognize that and wholeheartedly endorse that. But again, I just want the minutes to reflect, since you weren't here, the fact that I believe a notice of violation should have been issued. It would have made our job a little bit easier, I think, that night. With that, and I don't think we need to change the minutes because the minutes are correct as far as they state here. So with that, I would move that we approve the minutes.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the minutes. Second. We have a second. We have a roll call vote, please.
Writing down your comments. Mr. Bartold,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
I abstain.
Mr. Roberto,
Yes.
Mr. Reininger,
Okay, the minutes have been approved as read. Administrative matters?
None.
Business cards?
Back in the office. You have to get me after the meeting.
I would like to also mention, I think Mr. Martin mentioned we should probably address in the zoning code the side signage. I would like for the staff to review that too. This is, I think, at least the 4th time that we've had people come before the board for that particular instance, so I think we probably should address it in our code book.
Okay, we do have it noted, so we will
All right.
start taking a look at that for you.
Thank you. If we have nothing else, we will stand adjourned.